The silence after my father's last breath echoed the emptiness that would soon fill my life. Little did I know, the deepest wound wouldn't come from his absence, but from the man who swore to cherish me forever. My name is Clara Bennett, and at 36, I thought my life was a tapestry woven with gold threads. Mark, my husband, was the charming weaver, or so I believed, crafting a fairy tale that was about to unravel with cruel precision. 8 years ago, a conference in Boston sparked our connection. I, in event planning, and he, a speaker radiating confidence, a beacon I mistakenly steered my ship towards. "He seems like a good man, Clara," Dad had said over pancakes the following week, a familiar warmth in his voice. "But remember, my love, some stars only shine under spotlights, fading when the stage lights dim." I chuckled it off. Dad was my protector, my world since Mom's passing when I was 20. He was Bennett and Company, a $40 million empire built on his sweat and dreams. 2 years later, we stood at the altar, a small gathering of loved ones witnessing our vows. Dad, tears glistening, walked me down the aisle, his proud smile a memory I now clutch like a lifeline. Mark's mother, Eleanor, sat front row, a designer dress draped over a permanent scowl. Her disapproval was a cold draft from day one. "She's adequate," I'd overheard her whisper to Mark at the rehearsal dinner, her tone laced with disdain, "but hardly the CEO type." I tried. Flowers on Mother's Day, invitations to every family dinner, my efforts bounced off her like hail on a tin roof. Mark? He'd just shrug, dismissing her barbs as harmless quirks, a habit I now recognized as a deliberate deflection. 6 years spun by, marked by Dad's slow decline. The cancer, a relentless thief, stole him in 4 short months. He slipped away in his sleep, leaving a void that swallowed me whole. It wasn't just losing my only parent, it was the raw, unprepared shock. His funeral was a somber elegance, exactly as he would have wanted. Mark offered a hand, but his eyes held a distant flicker, more like impatience than grief. Eleanor arrived late, hidden behind dark sunglasses, a fleeting presence who vanished before the final blessing. The next day, the lawyer's call felt like a distant bell. The estate. I knew Dad was successful, but the magnitude was a hidden ocean. I expected a comfortable cushion, maybe early retirement. Instead, the lawyer's words hit me like a tidal wave. Everything. The company, the properties, the accounts. $40 million, give or take. My hands trembled as I signed papers, the weight of his legacy settling on my shoulders. It felt less like a blessing and more like a leaden cloak. That night, the legal documents lay scattered on our coffee table, a stark landscape of my new reality. Tears welled, not from joy, but from the aching absence he left behind. Mark came home, his eyes skimming the documents before a low whistle escaped his lips. "So it's all true," he said, a predatory gleam in his eyes as he sat beside me. "Every last penny." I nodded, the enormity still sinking in. "Yeah, it's a lot." He grinned, but the warmth didn't reach his eyes. His tone shifted, a calculating edge creeping in. "Well, we should probably strategize. Investments, of course. That Vermont place you loved?" "Definitely. And we'll need to decide how much to give Mom." "Give?" The word caught in my throat. Mark looked at me as if I'd suddenly sprouted a second head. "Eleanor, my mom. She's family. Half, right? We give her half." I almost laughed, thinking it was a cruel joke born of awkwardness. Then I saw his face, a mask of calm, unwavering seriousness. A cold dread snaked its way up my spine. "Mark, this is my inheritance. From my father. Why on earth would we give half to your mother?" He offered a patronizing smile, the kind you'd give a child struggling with simple addition. "Because she's family, Clara. She's been through so much, raised me single-handedly. It's only right, a matter of basic decency." A harsh, disbelieving laugh burst from me. Not amusement, but a raw, visceral reaction to the sheer audacity. He and his mother weren't family to my father. They were circling vultures, and the realization hit me with brutal force. That was the first crack in the foundation of our carefully constructed life. Mark's demand to hand over half my inheritance to Eleanor hung in the air, a toxic cloud suffocating the room. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Had I truly heard him? His unwavering gaze confirmed the chilling reality. "Mark," I said, my voice tight with disbelief. "My father entrusted me with this. Not us. Me. This isn't a lottery win. It's his life's work, his legacy. Why would we give a single dime to your mother, let alone half?" His jaw tightened, and he leaned back, a scornful laugh escaping his lips. "Clara, don't be so incredibly selfish. She's family. My family." I blinked, the absurdity of his statement hitting me like a physical blow. "Exactly. Your family. Not mine." Eleanor barely knew my dad. She'd practically sprinted out of his funeral and hadn't even offered a hollow condolence. Mark's voice sharpened, the veneer of charm finally cracking. "That's just how she is. She's not good with emotions, but she cares deeply. Do you honestly think you're the only one who's grieving? What about my loss?" Watching my wife transform into a greedy. The word landed like a slap across the face. My breath hitched. My father's body was barely cold, and the man I'd promised forever to, the man who'd once held my hand through every fear, was now slinging accusations like greedy and share. Something had irrevocably broken, or perhaps the ugliness had finally surfaced. I stood abruptly, needing to escape the suffocating tension. "I need some air." His muttered, "Unbelievable," followed me out the door. Sleep was a distant luxury that night. His words, his entitled tone, replayed in my mind like a broken record. It wasn't just the money. It was the blatant disrespect for my father, the immediate assumption that he was entitled to something he'd never earned. Dad's words echoed in my memory. "Grief doesn't change people, Clara. It rips away the mask, revealing who they truly are." God, he was right. The next morning, Mark acted as if nothing had transpired. Coffee brewed, a peck on the cheek, a performance of normalcy. I remained a silent observer. Later that day, Eleanor's call came, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Clara dear," she cooed, "Mark told me the wonderful news. Your father was such a wise man." A pause, thick with expectation. "Now, this might feel a little awkward, but with all this money coming your way, I was thinking we should sit down and discuss the best way to manage it. I have some excellent ideas, investments, real estate, perhaps a lovely little place for myself." My grip on the phone tightened, my knuckles white. "Manage it, Eleanor? My father died less than a week ago." She'd scared. "Yes, and he'd want you to take care of family. That's what good daughters and good wives do." Something inside me snapped. "Eleanor, with all due respect, you're not my family. You're not entitled to a single cent of this. And the fact that you're even bringing this up now speaks volumes about your character." Silence. Then a voice as sharp and cold as ice. "You always thought you were too good for us. Well, let's see how long you last when you're all alone, sweetheart." The line went dead. Stunned, I stared at my phone, my hands trembling. By dinner, Mark had somehow heard about the call. His subtlety had vanished. "You had no right to speak to my mother that way," he accused, his voice rising. "She had no right to demand money." He glared. "She's my only family, and I won't let you treat her like dirt just because you've suddenly become wealthy." I met his gaze, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "This isn't wealth, Mark. It's the painful consequence of my father's death. And instead of offering comfort, you and your mother are treating it like a lottery win." His silence was a deafening admission. The following days were a descent into a bizarre reality. Eleanor became a permanent fixture, appearing unannounced with property brochures and interior designers. Mark not only tolerated it but encouraged it. "She's just excited, Clara. Don't be so dramatic." Dramatic? My marriage was crumbling before my eyes, and he accused me of being dramatic. I started locking my father's old office, the repository of the legal documents. Passwords were changed, a separate account was opened, and a private meeting with my lawyer was scheduled. "I'm not sure what to do yet," I confessed, "but I need to know my rights." He nodded grimly. "You're not the first to walk through that door after an inheritance, but you are the first to mention security cameras." "Cameras?" He leaned forward. "Install them now, especially when you live with someone who feels entitled to half of everything. The suggestion chilled me, but I followed his advice. 2 days later, I found Eleanor rifling through my desk drawers, not looking for a stray pen. That was the precise moment grief gave way to a cold, hard resolve. Eleanor didn't even have the decency to look ashamed when I caught her red-handed. "Oh, Clara," she said with a breezy nonchalance, as if caught borrowing sugar. "Just looking for a notepad. Mark said you keep them in here." Her hand hovered near the locked file cabinet, the one holding my father's legacy. I stood in the doorway, my breath catching in my throat, not from fear, but from a white-hot fury. "Next time you need something," I said, my voice dangerously low, "ask." Her smile was tight and smug. "Of course, dear." As soon as she was gone, I relocked the drawer and reviewed the security footage. Clear as day, Eleanor's greedy hands sifting through folders, opening envelopes, her eyes scanning labels. She was hunting for something, and a sickening certainty settled in my stomach. That night, the confrontation with Mark was inevitable. Your mother was in my office today. She was trying to find the inheritance paperwork. Mark didn't even flinch. She was curious. It's a lot of money, Clara. People get curious. She had no right. He sighed, rubbing his temples as if I were the one causing him distress. You're being paranoid. It's not like she stole anything. She doesn't need to steal it, I snapped. She's trying to manipulate us into giving it to her. Mark stood, his voice rising. She's not manipulating anyone. She's trying to help. And frankly, you should be grateful someone is thinking clearly about how to use this money. You're acting like a damn hoarder. The accusation hung in the air, a venomous barb. A hoarder. Mark recoiled slightly, perhaps realizing the damage his words had inflicted. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly, his tone placating. I just meant you're keeping it all to yourself. That's not what families do. Something within me solidified, a cold, unyielding core. This isn't about family, Mark, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. It's about greed, control, and the fact that since my father died, you've stopped seeing me as your wife and started seeing me as a walking, talking bank account. Mark scoffed and stormed out. I didn't follow. I couldn't. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my heart a leaden weight in my chest, and I wept. Not for my father this time, but for the shattered illusion of my marriage. The paperwork was just a formality now. The following week was a blur of quiet preparation. A financial advisor, a second lawyer specializing in asset protection, I armed myself with knowledge and legal safeguards. Funds were slowly moved, every transaction meticulously documented. The security system was upgraded, cameras installed at every entrance, and a private investigator discreetly delved into Eleanor's financial history. The report confirmed my suspicions: a mountain of debt, failed ventures, and a recent, desperate inquiry about a luxury skincare line with zero capital. Her motives were glaringly obvious. Meanwhile, Mark's behavior swung wildly between icy distance and sudden, cloying affection. Flowers appeared one night, a hastily prepared dinner the next. I've been thinking, he said over the clinking of silverware, maybe we got off on the wrong foot with all this. It's been a tough time, losing your dad, the inheritance, planning our future. I watched him, a cold detachment settling over me. He hadn't cooked in over a year. I left the wine untouched. So, what exactly are you proposing? I asked, my voice flat. He offered a practiced smile. Let's just start fresh. Forget the money talk. A trip, just you and me. Somewhere romantic. I stared at him, the charade sickeningly transparent. This wasn't reconciliation. It was a calculated maneuver. He thought he could lull me into a false sense of security, charm his way back into control. It was too late. I think I'll pass on the trip, Mark, I said, my smile polite but firm. Work is incredibly demanding right now. He didn't argue, but the glint in his eyes promised he wouldn't give up easily. The next morning, a subtle but unsettling detail caught my eye. My laptop, usually closed and tucked away, was slightly ajar, moved an inch or two. A shiver traced its way down my spine. A quick check of the login activity confirmed my fears. 2 failed password attempts in the dead of night, the camera light flickering on. Mark, of course, denied everything, a casual shrug dismissing my concerns as a glitch. I didn't argue. I simply changed my passwords again and followed my lawyer's next instruction. Document everything. Every conversation. Every suspicious glance. Every veiled attempt to manipulate me. It was all recorded, meticulously saved. When the time came, I wouldn't just walk away. I'd walk away with irrefutable proof. If Mark thought he could play me for a fool, he was about to learn the true strength of the woman he married. 3 days later, the pretense shattered completely. The mask slipped, revealing the raw greed beneath. No more flowers, no more hollow apologies. He simply watched me, a predatory stillness in his eyes, as if sensing his prize slipping through his fingers. Eleanor, however, escalated her tactics. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find her perched at my table, barefoot, robe carelessly open, sipping my coffee as if she owned the place. The emergency key, the one Mark swore he'd given to the dog walker, glinted in her hand. "Clara," she said, her voice dripping with false concern, "we need to have a serious chat." I stared, my disbelief bordering on fury. "You need to leave my house. Now." She didn't budge. "I just want to make sure you're not making any rash decisions. You're under a lot of stress, dear. I'd hate for you to make a financial blunder because you're grieving." A bitter laugh escaped me. "You mean a blunder like not handing over millions to a woman who hasn't worked in a decade and calls me greedy behind my back?" Eleanor's eyes narrowed, the sweetness replaced by a venomous glare. "Careful, Clara. It's not wise to make enemies in your own home." I leaned in slightly, my voice low and steady. "This house isn't yours, Eleanor. And neither is the money. Get out before I call the police." She rose slowly, her gaze promising retribution. "You think you're so clever, but women like you always crack in the end." I held her gaze until she finally turned and slammed the door behind her. I locked it, took a deep, shuddering breath, and called my lawyer. "It's time," I told him, my voice firm. "I want to file for divorce." The process began swiftly and quietly, as my lawyer advised. Half the inheritance was already safely tucked away in a trust, untouchable thanks to my father's foresight. The other half remained in my personal account, technically joint property. That night, I requested a meeting with Mark at a neutral location, a cafe, the following morning. I arrived early, choosing a corner table with a clear view. The divorce papers lay heavy in my bag, alongside the flash drive, my arsenal of evidence. Mark arrived late, a forced smile plastered on his face. "Hey," he said casually. "What's this all about?" I wasted no time, sliding the envelope across the table. "Divorce papers." His smile faltered. He didn't touch the envelope. "Is this a joke?" "No, Mark. This is me saying I'm done." A cold, humorless laugh escaped him. "You're serious?" "Over money." "No," I corrected him, my voice steady. "Over disrespect, betrayal, and you treating my father's death like your personal jackpot." His smile vanished. "I supported you, Clara. For years. I was there when your mother died. And now that you're rich, you're just throwing me away." "No, Mark," I said, my voice laced with a weariness that went beyond words. "You threw yourself away the moment you decided your mother's greed was more important than your wife's grief." His hand slammed on the table, drawing startled glances. "You think you're so smart? You think you can just take everything? We're married. I get half." "Actually, no." My smile was cold and measured. "The inheritance is separate property." My lawyer confirmed it. "You have no claim. Not a single penny." His face paled. "You're bluffing." I placed the flash drive on the table. Every conversation, every lie, every attempt to manipulate me. "It's all here. Push me, and the judge will see every last detail." He stared at the drive as if it were a venomous snake. "I'm offering you a fair settlement," I said, my voice firm. "Take what we built together, nothing more, or fight me and walk away with even less." He leaned back, his eyes hollow. "You really think you've won?" "I already have." He stood, took the envelope, and left without another word. That night, the locks were changed again. Eleanor received a cease and desist letter. They were both blocked from every aspect of my life. There was no turning back. But for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The line had been drawn. Retribution would follow. The morning after, the silence in my house was a symphony of peace. No more heavy footsteps, no more Eleanor's cloying perfume, no more fake smiles. Just quiet. I stood in my sun-drenched kitchen, coffee warming my hands, and for the first time since Dad's funeral, I felt like I was truly breathing again. But the peace was fleeting. 3 days later, the fight began. My lawyer's message confirmed it. Mark was demanding spousal support, claiming I'd amassed wealth during our marriage and he'd provided invaluable emotional support. My blood ran cold. Emotional support? The man who'd pressured me to give half my inheritance to his mother? The one who barely acknowledged my grief? It was a pathetic, desperate move. But I was prepared. Our response was swift and comprehensive. The invasion of privacy, the attempted hacking, Eleanor's intrusions, the recordings of his callous remarks, and the damning video of Eleanor snooping. The judge's rejection of his claim was swift and absolute. Not only will he not receive any of your inheritance, my lawyer informed me, but the court views his actions as manipulative and predatory. We can pursue a restraining order if necessary. Let's keep that as an option, I replied, a grim satisfaction settling within me. But it wasn't needed. Mark started to unravel. A call from an unknown number, his shaky voice on the other end. Clara, please just hear me out. Silence. I messed up. I see that now. My mom. She got in my head. I was greedy. But I miss you. I miss us. I waited for the inevitable manipulation. You can't do this to me, he finally cried, his voice laced with desperation. I gave you years of my life. And now you're leaving me with nothing. That was the moment the final illusion shattered. He never loved me. He loved the idea of what I represented. Security, status, access. When he realized he couldn't control me, panic set in. You gave me nothing, Mark, I said, my voice calm but firm. And I owe you even less. I hung up and blocked his number. 2 weeks later, the divorce was final. Clean. Efficient. My assets, my company shares, Dad's apartment, all protected. Mark walked away with a few $1,000s and the tattered remnants of his pride. Eleanor's frivolous lawsuit for emotional distress was promptly dismissed. With the dust settled, a donation to a cancer foundation in Dad's name felt like a fitting tribute, a moment of closure. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. Freedom tasted like the first breath after holding it for too long. 7 months later, the divorce decree was a quiet victory in my hand. The house held too many ghosts. I sold it and moved into Dad's downtown apartment, renovating it into a sanctuary of warmth and light. The first night there, alone but safe, I lit a candle and looked out at the city lights. Dad would have been proud, not of the money, but of the fight in me. Power isn't in how loud you are, Clara, he'd always said. It's in how quietly you refuse to be used. Silence followed the divorce. Then, through mutual friends, I learned of Mark's bankruptcy and Eleanor's retreat into a basement apartment, her social media presence erased. Their empire of entitlement had crumbled. I, however, was rebuilding on a foundation of truth. Work became my focus. A scholarship in Dad's name, mentoring young women, giving back felt like the most authentic way to honor his memory. I learned that love without respect is possession, and family without boundaries is chaos. I didn't just survive, I outgrew it. And the greatest revenge was finding peace without their validation. Here I stand, still soft, still smiling, but finally, no longer silent. One afternoon, a letter tucked in Dad's favorite book offered a final piece of wisdom. Money reveals, it doesn't change. Never feel guilty for having what others feel entitled to. Share with love, protect from pressure. Choose peace always. His words, a final compass guiding me forward.